Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Yeah, it's about 4:54. Got the place to myself just temporarily. My mom took my nephew home back to his house, and she has to stop at the hardware store here in town, or at least some hardware store in town, and see if she can get her lamp that she has right here, a big light fixture, fixed. Long story short, when she tries to turn it on, she would basically use a three-way bulb, but it wouldn't flicker anymore. It wouldn't turn on. It's kind of doing what her little lamp is doing in her room. It takes a few clicks to go on, and I guess this one finally decided that's it. And I'm only assuming, in my opinion, that it's because she hangs stuff from it. She hangs this big metal like dream catcher, like it looks like a dream catcher wind chime, if you will, from it. So she doesn't have no outside patio with a roof and anything that she can hang it up from there like my grandma does at her house in Hayward. So anyway, long story short, she's trying to get that fixed. Maybe she's going to get my brother-in-law to fix it, and that's why she might be at my sister's for a while. But anyway, hope you're all enjoying a good Memorial Day weekend. And let's get to the video at hand. You can see above or below, depending on how you watch this. For anybody that watches Rowdy C, Chris Moore, Rowdy Reviewer, RowdyC's videos on Daily Motion, or wherever you have access to them, mostly Daily Motion, which seems to be the place to go for a lot of these guys that used to be mainly on Blimp. Some are still there, some are slowly transitioning to Daily Motion in other areas. So but anyway, with that said, I was watching some of his videos, and one thing he did at the end of one of his first few seasons was a top 10 Frak ups video. Frak up, of course, being his way of saying the mega curse word, if you know what I mean. So, I was watching this. I was thinking, okay, well, what are the biggest Frak ups is he talking about? Now, at first, I assumed it had to be his biggest Frak ups in the history of television and movies. That wasn't the case. What it was his top 10 Frak ups of his own accord, of basically him, screwing up certain details that he forgot to add in, or he forgot to mention, or he didn't know about, or even acknowledge, and he screwed up because people, I guess, would comment to him, oh, by the way, this is that. So, but as I watched this, it got me wondering, okay, I can see where he's getting at with this. Now, I'm sure, he's done some other Frak up videos as well, like 5 other Frak ups, like, I guess what he's messed up or something. I haven't seen those yet. But I do know it's not the first time that someone's done a top 10 video, or just a video in general, discussing some of the most screwed up things they've done on their channel, channel, basically like missing details and stuff like that for reviews. But it's also not the first time that anybody's done a video like this to where they talk about some of the most screwed up things when it comes to television or movies. Now, in response to that, I've decided, why not do my own? Now, this ain't going to be in particular any order. This ain't going to be a top 10 or anything like that. This is mainly myself talking about some of the most screwed up, fracked up, beep-upped things that you could ever see come out of television, whether it's live action, animation, and the same with movies and even comic books. So I think we should start off with probably one of the most infamous ones of all. Now, it's one of the Star Trek series. I think it's right after Next Generation. I think it's Voyager. And, Star Trek just like any sci-fi series, is always bound to have one of those WTF episodes or stories that they come up with, create, and air that make you wonder after you've watched it, what were they, to quote the angry video game nerd, what were they thinking? Yeah. Though there have been those kind of episodes sometimes, and even in movies. There have been certain movies at times, it's like, what were they thinking? And, you know, when it comes to Star Trek, they've had their share of them. But probably the most infamous one is where you take two of the main characters, one being the captain towards the end of the episode, and the other, I guess, being like a co-captain or some kind of, you know, some kind of in the line of chain of command kind of deal on Voyager. And let's just put it this way. This episode is so screwed up, and I've talked about this before. This episode is so screwed up, so fracked up, so peeped up, that not even those that worked on the show, the actors and actresses, the crew, or even the writer, director, and producer have any idea what they were thinking. And this episode is one of those rare episodes in any series. There's a one-time deal and has literally been reduced to being to having nothing to do with the continuity. That's right. If you're thinking about the episode I'm thinking of, you're right on point. Now, I can't think of the name right now, but basically from what I've seen clips of it here on YouTube. I've seen clips here and there. I've seen pictures of it. Basically, one of the main characters, tries to attempt warp 10 on a small shuttle. He succeeds, but there are side effects. And these side effects basically cause him to become amphibian. In other words, starts to become more lizard-like. And a lot of things happen. He starts getting scaly, he loses his hair, he basically breaks off his own tongue. It's like, what in the world, right? He's basically becoming a version of the character in the movie Enemy Mine almost. Let's just put it this way. So he's becoming this, and what's happening is it seems that he's sort of evolving / de-evolving. It's like he's growing intelligent, but he's de-evolving at the same time. It's like he's evolving, de-evolving. It's just confusing because here's what happens. At the end of the episode, he ends up kidnapping the captain, taking her on a small shuttle, and just like what caused him to go, and just what caused his side effects in him becoming a lizard guy, whatever, he ends up going warp 10 in a small shuttle with her up on board. And what happens? Because of this, he, along with the captain, end up going full on de-evolutionary, go full on evolving, de-evolving into salamander creatures. That's right. Basically, long story short, the crew ends up finding them on a swamp-like planet. They've already completely evolved, de-evolved into these salamander-like creatures. And on top of that, you think that's screwed up. After stunning both of them so they can take them back to Voyager and restore them to normal, they make a discovery. This is being the Voyager crew makes the discovery that I can't think of his name right now, this main character and the captain ended up having sex, mated, if you will, and the captain, because she's now in the same state as her crew member is, ends up having eggs, if not having babies. And what's so screwed up about it is this happens in just a matter of days. And you wonder why not just Star Trek fans, but the entire crew working on the show, from the actors, actresses, the film crew to the writer, producer, and director, want nothing to do with this episode. Don't even want to acknowledge it as continuity, and just basically as a one-time deal. Because when you watch this episode, if you're a Trekkie, as the name is for the fandom, would this episode really fit into continuity with you? And would this episode make any sense? Especially at the ending? From what I've seen, and I've done videos on it, no, it wouldn't. It would not. I mean, that could be like the top. If you wanted to do a countdown, that would be right at the top. Honestly, it would be. And if you think that's crazy, how about something that RowdyC, Huey Toonmore, I think Animat, Media Hunter, and a few others have reviewed, all part of a storyline they got going, or some kind of rivalry they got going with Count CGI. How about you allow a guy that does paintings, recolorings, psychedelic-wise, of established cartoon characters, give him the keys, if you will, give him the keys to have full free range to produce, animate, and release a pilot on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim called The Groovanians, which has been pwned by every person every reviewer that I'm a fan of, and even has been pwned by the network, Cartoon Network themselves, because according to what all these guys have said, this pilot for The Groovanians has only been seen twice, and that's it. Now you might be wondering, for anybody that's saying, well, why is this such a screwed up show? Simple. What sense does it make? Really, seriously, what sense? It really doesn't make any sense. It's like you're trying to create something that is so screwed up in many ways that there's no real plot point. And if there is, they barely gave a glance at it. I mean, what is this the Norman villain supposed to do? Keep coming back and getting sabotaged and all that? Doesn't make any sense. You know what? Every time it's in a whole day is a 24-hour day. Basically you're telling me that for 24 hours on a planet it's daytime, and then for the next 24 hours it's nighttime, and that's the end of the day? It just doesn't make sense. And just some of the things they did in it. When I watch the reviews, especially Rowdy's and Huey's and all that, it's like, I look at this and I'm like, again, to quote James Wolfe, what were they thinking? What was this guy who came up with this pilot thinking? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. The animation, as they said, looks like a CGI attempt at stop motion, which is never a good sign. It's just not a good sign. And that is why anybody who would do a top 10 list or just a list on its own like I'm doing of things that are so screwed up, they would put this in media, they would put this in that category of some of the most screwed up, fracked up, beeped up shows or anything that's been thought of in all sorts of media. It's like, what sense does this make? It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. And then, how about this? I've harped on this many times. Many fans have harped on it. Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comics have not been without controversy. Have not been without the biggest screw-ups either. And probably the biggest in recent memory is the Mecha Sally arc. I mean, what was the point of roboticizing Sally into Mecha Sally, weaponizing her, depending on how you look at how she was weaponized? What sense did that make if all she's going to be for a majority of the time is sort of like in the background, it's just another robotic minion? I mean, heck, you do a freaking issue of Sonic Universe where she's standing alongside along Metal Sonic and all these other metallic versions of the Freedom Fighters as part of the new Team Metal series. Team Metal. Seriously. And the opportunities that this story had, despite what Ian Flynn may finally tell us down the line, the opportunities this story arc had was so sorely missed. It just makes people want to put this on the list of the most screwed up, fracked up, beeped up ideas and things that come out of any media. I mean, why start something if you're not going to finish it despite what happens behind the scenes? That is screwed up. It really is. It is totally screwed up. And if you think that's crazy, how about this? When the adventures of Superman back in the 1950s finally ended, and mostly due to the tragedy of the death of George Reeves, who played Superman on the show, they tried, the same people, at least as far as I know, tried to spin off Superman, or spin off the series, with an all-new live-action puppet-like series called Super Pup. And this has been talked about in some Superman documentaries. But basically they tried to spin off the success of the Adventures of Superman with Super Pup, with people in nothing more than costumes of dogs representing or reprising, the characters of the Superman show, almost. And yet, because this was so screwed up, this was so fracked up, this was so beeped up, not even the network wanted to air the pilot. And that's bad when a network, and this has been done so many times throughout the history of television, that's pretty bad when a network doesn't want to air your pilot for your show. That's pretty bad, because even they know it's screwed up and it's stupid. And if you think that's crazy, here's another one. And I've harped on this before. I'm not the only one, but it's not as prominent as the Mecha Sally deal. And it's based on a show that I still collect the toys of for the franchise. And that's Nickelodeon's TMNT. I mean, with all due respect, I'm glad it's got another season and all that. I'm glad it's a huge hit for them. But there's so many things that are screwed up with this show that it's basically a show you're wondering what were they thinking or what are they thinking coming up with it. I mean, first of all, why in the world would you take established human characters like a